Information about people is and has long been collected and stored in different separate electronic databases. There are two methods of collating information about a person, where the information is extracted from the different databases. The most common method of gathering data is the ID number approach. The other method is the electronic ID. With ID numbers, we allocate a unique identifier to each person and record it in the database. With an electronic ID, we establish a link between an external representation of the person, called their electronic ID, and the data about the person in the database. With an ID number, we put a unique identifier into each different database. With the electronic ID, we establish unique links between an electronic ID record and each of the different databases. Both methods achieve the same objective. They link data about a person where the data is held in different databases. With modern technology, the electronic ID is a much cheaper approach. There's a good reason for this. If we use an ID number, an extra field has to be put into the records in each database, and each record has to be identified. This proves to be an expensive operation. It's the equivalent of indexing all the records in the database. In contrast, the links between the electronic ID and the data can be established at any time and only when needed. It is the equivalent of searching for information at the time it is needed or just-in-time indexing. Not only is it less expensive to collate data, it is also cheaper to protect the data, and with it, the privacy of individuals. With the ID number approach, every database has to be equally secure. This is because once a person's ID number is known, then potentially everything about an individual can be found. Not only can it be found, but it can be found without the knowledge of the individual. The electronic ID approach only needs to protect the electronic ID. This is much easier because there is only one place to protect, and because the electronic ID can report any breaches of security involved to the individual concerned. When we collect information about a person, we then need to make decisions using the information. Electronic IDs make these decisions easier and less expensive. The reason is that the logic for making decisions can be stored with the individual, and all the information about previous decisions is available to the electronic ID and can be stored separately from the databases. In implementation, it turns out that if we use an ID number, we also create many electronic IDs, one for each collation, as a place to store the logic and decisions. Take the example where a doctor is making a decision about a prescription. The patient has come to the doctor and identified themselves and their electronic ID to the doctor. The doctor can now use the person's electronic ID to assist in finding information about the patient. The doctor can ask the electronic ID for information about previous prescriptions to help in the decision-making. The information about the prescriptions is provided by the electronic ID to the doctor. Information about a person in other non-health databases can also be collated and used without it having to be designed into the health system. Here, the doctor has issued a prescription. The doctor asks the electronic ID to send the prescription to the patient's pharmacy of choice. The pharmacy prepares the prescription and has it ready for the patient when they come to collect. The patient identifies themselves to the pharmacy and collects the prescription. At the same time as collecting the prescription, the patient can instruct the electronic ID to approve payment from their bank and move funds from the bank back to the pharmacy. Exactly how less expensive is difficult to estimate, but it could be up to an order of magnitude less expensive. That is, this may mean e-health with electronic IDs may be 10% the cost of e-health with IDs using ID numbers.